things that people in any service or any other type of business fail to do, and here's the action card, is action card number 5, we're moving along nice, is the Pareto, that's the 80-20 rule, principle of sales. Now, what most people do is they promote 80% of the time, shamelessly. They begin by promoting, they think their product is great because they think it's about the message, right? Well, remember the golden rule. Is that the way you want to be done unto? You want to figure out that you have a problem. They understand your problem, right? Seek first to understand and then be understood. That's one of Stephen, our former Covey, the older Covey, who's no longer with us. Maybe he's watching and listening, but that was one of his habits of the 7 habits of highly effective people. And other people have said it before him. Rather than promoting 80% of the time, as you may do and not even realize it, and then pre-qualify that they're the right candidate, and you do that 20%, why don't we flip it? And here's the premise. Pre-qualify 80% of the time. You do that with questions, with intakes, with assessments. I mean, like a doctor, right? You're pre-qualifying. He's going to diagnose you and say, hey, I think we got to take out your gallbladder. You say, what? I didn't even write anything down. You didn't even ask any questions. That's how most people sell. So you're not going to kill the patient. You're going to kill the relationship with the candidate. And so pre-qualify 80% of the time, promote 20%, and that reduces rejection. I won't even make the offer, Jack, until I know they're highly qualified. And I'll even ask them, is it okay if I show you the 3 options and the investments on how we can make change for you possible? And that's after going through a bunch of questions and answers in a discovery session. And when they say yes, my batting average so far, 4 out of 10 people will say yes to $100 to $30 or $12,000 offer. I don't have any 12,000 right now. I'm going to have some with Joe Vitale because we have a new joint venture together. But we have 30s and we have hundreds, and more than you could imagine. And they're not difficult to service. And it's all through a process. And I'll show you that a little later in on the interview, because we're going to move very, very fast. Now, very quick thing. You will have 5 to 9 major objections to them saying yes to you. And an objection is a good thing. It's resistance, but that means they're interested, right? If they don't object, then they're not interested. So anticipate objections. So write those down. Now, I did this, and I'm wearing my Genius Network shirt here. Genius Network is a great mastermind I belong to. It's $25,000 a year. My 2nd year I'm doing it. And Jack, you know Joe Polish, of course. And he asked me to sell his Genius Network to all the people who go to a big event every year in November. And we're doing the same thing this year. And so I assembled a breakfast panel, and we feed people, right? So when you feed breakfast, then that's building rapport, you're breaking bread. And then I'm the master of ceremonies. The whole thing takes an hour. And so if you have a mastermind, this is a great way to sell it. I talked to Patty and to Russ about this as well. So you have a breakfast panel at an event. They're live. You just fed them. They kind of feel obliged to listen. And so what I do is I talk about my story and why I was one of the first 20 people for Joe to invite into Genius Network in 2010, and I joined in 2017. And imagine all the money I could have made with the people who are there. Now, one of the reasons I didn't join is I said, Joe, why am I going to pay you $25K when some of the people in the network I've introduced you to? Well, that's an objection. Another one was, Joe, it's not the right time. My kids are young. Or another one is, I won't have time to attend the events. There's 3 events. I don't want to lose out on that. Or my business is not ideal. Or I know some of the people. I can just deal with them without having to pay the $25K. Now, these are all valid objections, but they weren't handled for me at the time. And then I tell that story. So I have 5 panelists, and the panelists are members, much longer than me. Some have been there forever, multi-millionaires, some of them. And each panelist has one objection to talk about. So what I do is I allow the panelist to fillet through storytelling and seeding each objection one by one by one. At the end of that hour, at the end of the day, $810,000 worth of sales for 1 hour of work. So that's how powerful it can be. Someone in that room, Roland Fraser, who's one of the smartest marketers I know. He's with the digital marketing group, Ryan Dice and Perry Belcher. He runs the War Room, $30,000 mastermind, which I just joined. He saw me do that. He said, can you do it for us? So I did it at the traffic and conversion event. It was a morning panel, same exact thing, only we had 2 sessions, and there were nearly 150 people in each. With Joe, there was about 70 people. And when all was said and done, I didn't do all the sales, but it was the spark that ignited it, nearly $3 million in sales in 2 sessions. Now, that's not me doing it. It's a process, and it's seeding through storytelling, which is the new selling. So I hope that story makes sense. It's not everyone can relate to that because they don't have masterminds, but it's the same principle at a very high end. And I really want to assist at no cost to you, maybe a trade, on enrolling more people into a mastermind, because it's counterintuitive, but we have a pretty good track record. I'm seeding you right now, Jack. Back to you.
No, I was just sitting here writing that we should be doing that at BTS to move people into trainer. We need to talk more, Alex. All right, anyway, you've been talking about how coaches and trainers and consultants hate to sell, and so how is the All Selling Aside podcast relevant or important to these people?
Well, like, relevance means it needs to work, and the biggest thing people are afraid of is rejection. I think that's my experience. Now, it's not the rejection that they fear, and that's not what causes the fear. I believe, and I'm not a psychologist or a therapist, although I'm a marketing therapist in many cases, but I just believe from my experience that anticipating the rejection causes a shift, and all of a sudden they say things and do things that they normally wouldn't do with a friend. And they end up looking like a pitch person. They look like, I'm going to call it pimping. They look like they're pimping their stuff versus pampering through the seeding and storytelling process. Now, I'm sorry if pimping is offensive to you, but that's what it looks like to the other person. So if you don't want to appear that way, then you might want to, or I invite you to consider the following. Now, whether your sale, whether your enrollment is through a webinar, which it might be, maybe one-to-one, face-to-face, or on video or phone, maybe on stage. We're on stage and we're asking people to run to the back of the room or walk to the back or skip to the back or crawl to the back and get something. Stage is another place. Or maybe it's a free consultation, right? Where you want to show them how you coach or how you train, or give them a little bit of a insight, lift the hood. The big mistake people make is I'm not saying you, but you'll know if you're rushing the sale. That's what they do. They rush to the sale too soon. They haven't pre-qualified. They're selling hamburgers to vegetarians. And you'll know if you're rushing the sale by looking at your paycheck. Is it where you want it to be? Would you like to add a 0? And I'm not trying to be cute. Your paycheck will determine whether you're selling at a level that you're willing to sell. Who's one of the greatest salesmen in history? He was a man during the time of the birth of Christianity. I believe it was the 13th apostle who had no interest in Christianity in the beginning, Paul. And if you know Paul's story, he was the best promoter, man. I mean, if it weren't for Paul, Christianity wouldn't be as strong as it is today in the sheer number of people. He got the gospel out. Now, this is not about religion. It's about sales. Okay. I think he was a better salesperson than Jesus. He got the word out long after, the head man was no longer on earth. So think in those terms. You don't have to be Christian to think that Paul is a great salesperson. Look at his story as an allegory and see what he did. And that's what I did. And Buddha was a great salesperson. He would sell people differently. The advanced people would get sold differently. And the Buddhist text is different for the peasants versus the cognoscente, or the people who are a little bit more sophisticated of his day. And he taught for over 40 years, and he started late in life, as did Muhammad, right? So like over the age of 40. So the rushing to the sale leads to rejection because you don't have that bond. Unintentionally, your webinar, your one-on-one presentation, your stage presentation, it's going to look like a bait and switch if you rush to the sale. Now, your people won't tell you. They may just be courteous to you, But I'm telling you, if I watched it, I'd say, it looks like you're baiting and switching. If you say, I'm not trying to sell you something, you're baiting and switching. I am trying to sell you something. I'm trying to sell you to subscribe to All Selling Aside on iTunes. What does it cost? $0. What do I want? I want a review and a 5-star rating. That's what I'm selling here, right? And so now, if you decide to move on and do something else with me, we'll see. But that's your buying. I'm not selling. And by the way, I start with a story. Every single All Selling Aside episode starts with a story. That's a seed. So rushing to the sale. Now, the purpose for any trainer, coach, or service professional is to ethically influence in getting new clients. And ethical influence is the key. That ethically influence, I think that's an adverb, not an adjective. I don't know. I wasn't that good in English, but I know how to use it, at least for selling. To ethically influence someone means you're being transparent, you're being genuine, you're being authentic, and they trust you. Trust is the lubricant to the transaction. And if you look relational versus transactional, people are going to say yes. How do you look relational? Pre-qualify 80% of the time, promote 20% of the time. How do you pre-qualify? Assessment, intake, questionnaire, application. Okay, it goes on and on.